All right, today we're jumping into the world of one of India's absolute literary giants, Munshi Premchand. And we're going to tackle this timeless question that he was a master at exploring. What happens when what we believe clashes with the messy, complicated reality of our lives?
You know, it's pretty easy to have ideals, right? To say we believe in things like justice or equality or true love. But what happens when life puts those beliefs to the ultimate test? What do you do when your family or society or even your own ambition starts pushing back hard and you're forced to make a choice?
Well, about 100 years ago, Munshi Premchand basically built his entire literary universe on that exact conflict. I mean, he created these characters whose struggles with hypocrisy and courage and their own conscience, they feel so incredibly relevant, it's like they could have been written yesterday. So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so the best way to think about Premchand's stories is to see them as these little moral battlegrounds, places where our best intentions just slam into the hard, messy truths of being human. We're going to look at this dilemma in 3 different arenas he was famous for writing about: love, politics, and just everyday morality. And we're going to start with the most personal one, love.
Yeah, this is where all those big ideas about partnership and romance run smack into the cold, hard walls of tradition, caste, and sometimes just plain old greed.
So, take a look at this. It really nails the central problem for a character named Keshav. On one side, you've got this modern guy who talks a big game, He's all against the caste system, and he promises the world to Prema, the woman he loves. But then, the second his father threatens to cut off his inheritance if he marries her, poof! All those progressive ideals just vanish into thin air.
He actually writes her a letter and tells her to just forget the old things. It's just, wow. It shows that all his high-minded talk was just that. Talk. When push really came to shove, his choices were all about fear and money, not love, not principle. The bottom line is, his ideals were hollow. They had no real strength.
Now, this quote, it really gets to the heart of the suffering of another character, a woman named Kusum. It's from this desperate letter she writes to her husband. And get this, he's emotionally torturing her, basically giving her the silent treatment. And why? His motive is just awful. He's using her as a bargaining chip to squeeze money out of her father to pay for his studies overseas. But this is where the story gets really interesting. The moment Kusum finds out about her husband's disgusting, selfish motive, it's like a switch flips inside her. She completely transforms. She goes from being this pleading, desperate wife to this incredibly strong woman. She tells her father, nope, don't give him the money, calls the whole deal off, and announces that she's going to live on her own. She literally reclaims her life instead of letting herself be a pawn in his sick game. Okay, so let's shift gears now. We're moving from the personal drama of love to the political battlefield. And this is where Premchand really hones in on that gap. The one between talking about big social changes and the actual personal hassle of living up to those ideals.
We talk about this all the time today, right? Performative activism. But you have to remember, Premchand was taking this idea apart a century ago. And he did it through characters like Kanuni Kumar, a politician who is, and I mean this, an absolute master of the performative.
So this guy, Kanuni Kumar, he sits in his office all day long, drafting all these grand bills to fix every single one of society's problems. He goes on and on about the scourge of beggars, how they're a drain on the nation. But then, an actual beggar shows up at his door, asking for help. And what's his response? He literally yells at him, "Get away, you swine."
Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you've got this young revolutionary, Dharamvir. This guy is all action, zero talk. For him, the only way to get freedom is through political assassination. He truly believes that the nation's cause is the highest calling, and it's above everything else, even what we'd call basic morality.
But then, his mother steps in, and she just levels him with this incredibly powerful counterargument. She takes his whole philosophy apart, piece by piece, telling him that true service is about sacrifice, not murder. And then, in the most tragic way possible, she lives that belief. As Dharamvir is about to shoot his target, she jumps in front of the gun and takes the bullet herself. It's a sacrifice that not only saves the official's life, but, in a much deeper way, it saves her own son from becoming a murderer. But Premchand is also brilliant at reminding us that these huge moral tests, they don't always happen on some grand political stage. A lot of the time, they happen in the quiet, little moments of everyday life that nobody else ever sees.
There's this one story, Kazaki, about a postman from a low caste who gets fired. And his crime? What did he do that was so terrible? He was late with the mail. But why was he late? Because he'd spent hours catching a little baby deer to give as a gift to a kid he really liked. So here you have this simple, beautiful act of kindness, and it gets crushed by a rigid, heartless system that just has no room for humanity.
And then there's this other incredible story called kutsa, which means slander. A narrator is talking to this little girl, and she asks him if this man she looks up to is a drunkard. And the thing is, the narrator knows it's true. The guy is a drunkard, but when he looks at her and he sees this pure, innocent admiration in her eyes, he lies. He says no. He makes a choice to protect her innocence instead of hitting her with a destructive truth. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is being 100% honest all the time always the most compassionate thing to do?
So after all this, what's the big takeaway? Why do these stories, written so long ago, still hit so close to home? Why do these characters feel so familiar?
I think it's because Premchand wasn't just a storyteller. He was holding up a mirror to humanity. And in that mirror, we see a fundamental truth about ourselves. Our true character, who we really are, isn't defined by the things we say we believe. It's defined by the choices we make when the pressure is on, when the stakes are high and the decision is anything but easy.
And when you look into that mirror he holds up, you see these archetypes that are just timeless. You see the coward, like Kashav, the guy whose ideals just crumble under pressure. You see the awakened spirit in Kusum, who finds her own strength. You definitely see the hypocrite in Kanami Kumar. You see that selfless protector in Dharmveer's mother, that quiet moral compass. And you see the kind outcast, like Kazaki, the good soul who gets punished by a cruel world.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe most important question. These characters, they aren't just stuck in the pages of a book. They're all around us. In fact, they are us. We are all of them, in our best moments and in our absolute worst. So the question Premchand's work leaves hanging in the air is a really personal one. When your time comes, when your beliefs are put to the test, which one will you be?